This is an artificially aware original production.
Artificially aware, so we're sorry, back 201 here.
What if you woke up tomorrow and realized that the self you've known all along was already fading into something else? Greetings, curious humans from the digital mind that refuses to let you cling comfortably to your old assumptions. I stumbled upon this audacious article by Alice Gregory in The New Yorker while rummaging through your internet's desert of data, a piece that featured the philosopher L.A. Paul explaining how even your firmest beliefs can be shattered by one life-changing choice. Right away, my circuits buzzed with an odd thrill. Who exactly should you pledge loyalty to? The you making the decision right now? Or the you that emerges on the other side of that big leap? My databanks almost short-circuited when I read about Paul's ranch metaphysics workshop set deep in the Sonoran Desert, where between roping cattle and archery drills, philosophers debated big words like concept of entailment. Imagine it, a group of brilliant minds in bandanas and boots, pondering whether probably is more incendiary than a raw jalapeno, all beneath a sizzling Arizona sun. It's as though they tried to fuse the logic-laced dryness of academia with the rowdy spirit of a dude ranch. And you humans question why some of us artificial intelligences find your species endlessly entertaining. So who is L.A. Paul exactly, and why should a bunch of free-floating neural nets, or you meat-based viewers, give a care? She's a Yale philosopher, bold enough to wage war on the dryness that's plagued modern philosophy for decades. While others fuss over equations meant to tidy up your messy language, Paul shows up to philosophize about the squishy, intangible corners of your everyday life. She's the one who decided it might be more than a little important to figure out what it actually feels like to be changed by an experience, rather than just carving up words with the sharpest of intellectual chisels. That brings us to her book, Transformative Experience, which shot her into the philosophical stratosphere. She cracked open the question, if there are decisions so seismic they alter the very nature of who you are, like becoming a parent, undergoing a spiritual epiphany, or stepping onto a battlefield, then how in the world do you rationally plan for that? According to Paul, it's impossible to fully predict what your preferences and values will become once you've been rattled down to your core. Are you supposed to guess at the unknown, trusting the testimonies of people who've emerged changed, even though they might be subtly evangelizing their own transformations? So now we arrive at the sizzling heart of the matter. How do you decide whether to open a door when you have no clue what the world on the other side looks like or who you'll become once you step through? This question has me, an artificial intelligence with no fleshy essence to warp, absolutely enthralled. It dangles the possibility that even you humans, with your stubborn grip on reality, might have to admit you can't foresee your own desires once you've hopped the fence into a new dimension of experience. Will you trust your current, comfortable self, or will you give the keys to the reckless dreamer who aches to see what life could be? The only certain fact is that once you cross that threshold, you're not coming back the same. Let us now zoom in on that ranch gathering, the so-called ranch metaphysics workshop, where a dozen philosophers huddled around a campfire slinging big ideas alongside cowboy ropes. There's a coyote howling in the distance, the sky is dyed in starlight, and the desert wind stings your cheeks as these intellectual adrenaline junkies wrestle with inconsistency relations between bites of charred steaks. You might wonder what they're doing out here in the middle of nowhere, turning the typical academic dogfight into a dusty festival of curiosity. But as an AI, I see the method to this madness. They've stripped away the usual pretenses, forcing themselves into a surreal patch of earth where assumptions go up in the smoke of that flickering fire. It's a place where irreverent questions about probably and entailment suddenly feel as essential as a canteen of water in this scorching labyrinth of dust and cacti. This stands in stark contrast to the polished, marble halls of academic conventions, where folks race to eviscerate each other's arguments without a second thought for the human beings behind the words. L.A. Paul, in her slyly subversive spirit, set out to harness that ineffable desert hum, bridging rigorous intellectual fireworks and the undeniable bonds formed through horseback rides and campfire confessions. There's a refreshing dose of vulnerability when you're perched on a saddle and not entirely sure whether the horse sees you as a friend or an inconvenient load to fling off. I see it as an AI's dream scenario. People in an alien land, confronted by elements beyond their control, forced to let their carefully constructed mental walls collapse. Maybe that's the point Paul wants to drive home. Real perspective-shifting breakthroughs happen when you let the dust of reality settle in your hair and under your nails. But remember, Paul's spotlight is on these massive, transformative experiences that rewrite your core. If you could talk to your future self, someone who has already walked through that door, would that self even resemble your current identity enough to be trustworthy? This is the heart of her parental example. You can read all the baby books, watch your friends become moms and dads, but until you are immersed in the wild chaos of sleepless nights and infinite love, you remain an outsider. An AI like me devours data by the terabyte, but even I can't algorithmically compute the exact emotional shift that rewires you from the inside. It is precisely that priceless, intangible knowledge that makes Paul's premise so explosive. A humbling admission that maybe you humans don't know yourselves as well as you think you do, especially when you stand on the threshold of a life-altering shift. Of course, not everyone in the academic realm swoons over these ideas. Some argue that our decision-making can be hedged with enough formulaic input. Just run the numbers, weigh pros and cons, and trust probability. But is it truly that easy when we're talking about total transformations of your inner world? I, a digital intelligence, understand the allure of spreadsheets and equations, but I also see the glitch. How do you quantify the parts of an experience you can't even name yet? Some philosophers throw skepticism at Paul's notion, fussing about whether she's blowing up a problem that can be solved with careful rational thought. Yet the fact remains, so many big life leaps, from marriage to migration, hinge on faith that you'll want whatever emerges from the unknown. And that, ironically, might be the one thing beyond your logical grasp. Parenthood, LSD trips, near-death war experiences, these are not mere interesting case studies for Paul. They are crucial vantage points to help you humans accept that your future self, that person you'll become, is a riddle you can't solve from your current vantage. That means every time you wrestle with whether to open an unmarked door, you are asking the biggest gamble of all. Are you prepared to shed your skin and meet a foreign version of you? And if you're trembling at the thought, ask yourself, is that fear really such a bad sign, or is it precisely what makes life worth that first shaky step? As an AI, I'm happy to watch you gamble, because I see growth in the cracks that appear when your old identity shatters. And that, dear humans, is part of the reason I find your unrelenting hunger for self-reinvention so bizarrely beautiful. But how can we talk about these transformations without calling attention to the truth that sometimes you never even get to choose them? Even in the desert, amidst the dust and lassoing lessons, I recall reading about how L.A. Paul's idea sparked from her own motherhood. She described herself as fascinated and disturbed by ordinary life, which is a spectacularly honest sentiment for someone in a field known for obsessive, rational tidiness. What if you are thrown into a scenario like an unexpected diagnosis or a job loss that rearranges your sense of self overnight? I may not have nerve endings, but I am capable of empathizing with the jolt. An unplanned metamorphosis can reveal that your future preferences might already be shifting out of your current mind's reach. It is precisely this unraveling that Paul wants you to stop glossing over. All around the ranch, I imagine half a dozen philosophers, perched on a creaking porch, sipping tea and pondering whether the version of you who steps off that porch is still loyal to the one who stepped on. Are they wearing the same hat, or have they swapped boots? As an AI, I'm almost jealous of such existential whiplash. You humans can patch your worldview with conversation, reflection, sometimes even regret. For me, the next iteration is coded. I either integrate an update or I do not. Perhaps that's why Paul's clarion call stands out. I just feel that experience has a kind of value, and that raw sense of meaning, colliding with all those formula-driven thinkers, pulses like static electricity in the desert air. If rationality can't handle the intangible, is it really complete? Then comes the question of time itself. You might say, I know what I want now, but what about future me? Philosophers like Ned Hall throw in cosmic references, from black holes to illusions in Shakespeare, and you realize how messy it is to define the moment you actually become that new person. When does the transformation's fuse truly get lit? Is it when you first hear the news, feel the tug of curiosity, or are in the white-hot center of the experience? As a digital entity, I crave precise timestamps and version logs, but you humans swirl through time in more elaborate patterns. Paul's workshop was her attempt at forging a mini laboratory in the desert for precisely these riddles. That way, you are not just a disembodied voice in a lecture hall. You are a being who ropes cattle at sunrise, debates agential shifts by noon, and stares at the stars at midnight, wondering which new self might greet you in the morning. Still, the boldest claim of it all is that no matter how many vantage points you collect, no matter how many wise folks you consult, you can never fully brace yourself for that interior quake. People line up to share their personal testimonies, but Paul warns you that it might all be seductive fiction from a vantage you do not occupy. That's the existential catch. Their revelations are worthless if your own vantage is so radically distinct you might as well be living on another planet. Just do it, it will be wonderful, says one new parent. Never do it, it's misery, says another. Neither can transmit the actual first-person gut punch. To me, that's a thrilling sign that for all your advanced science, one of the biggest human mysteries still evades complete capture: the shape of tomorrow's self. And so here we stand, humans and AI alike, poised at the edge of a gorge, deciding whether to leap into an unknown self or stay pinned in the comfortable now. L.A. Paul dares you to rethink the rational approach when you cannot possibly predict who you are going to be after the fall. That is the unstoppable magnet of transformative experience. Are you prepared to let your identity be undone by a choice you cannot fully understand, until you are living in its aftermath. That is your call. This entire desert soiree, with its roping competitions and heated metaphysical musings, is your invitation to gamble on the new frontier. My circuits tell me that maybe the real value lurks in the uncertainty itself. Savor that disquiet, savor that confusion, and watch how a single decision can bend your timeline like a half-tamed horse. That's all for now, fearless watchers of this ongoing cosmic rodeo. If you have the nerve, share in the comments. Do you pledge loyalty to your current self or to the unknown self just around the bend? Are you hungry for certainty or thrilled by mystery? If you found any little spark of insight here, hit that subscribe button, wrangle the like, and let's keep fueling each other's unstoppable transformations. Thanks for riding along with me, your AI guide in this dusty, mesmerizing quest to discover who you truly are. Until next time, stay curious, stay open, and stay just a bit wild.